We are live. Hello, Bassel Watter, and welcome to the Menopause Research and Education Fund. We do a lot of live interviews here, and I'm really looking forward to this one because we don't often get to talk about research that is meaningful. So let me tell everybody who you are. You are an obstetrician gynecologist with advanced expertise in fertility, endocrine gynecology, PMOS, and menopause. You've got years of research behind you, and you are also at the moment co-leading a research unit at Anglia Ruskin University. And it looks like you've secured some funding for some really interesting research on menopause and cancer, which is pretty controversial in the past because we just don't have a lot of information. So why is it controversial? What's the history behind this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Fiona, for hosting me today, and absolute pleasure to be speaking with the Menopause Research and Education Fund. Indeed, the link between the use of HRT and cancer has been an ongoing debate for many years, and we know that obviously initial uses of HRT was always what started without progesterone, so they were using only estrogen, and that provoked a lot of uterine cancers. Obviously, then we moved in our knowledge into using combined HRT, which reduces the uterine cancer, but then there was a slight concerns about increasing breast cancer. But then there are other types of cancer that we know that they could be hormone sensitive. So that could be, gastro, GI cancers, some types of neurocancers, some types of skin cancers like myelomas and so on. They can be hormone dependent, and some other cancers seems to have also associations with different types of HRT, like a colon cancer. But there was always this gap in terms of we don't really have strong, good quality studies. And also, majority of the evidence is a trait across menopause research is quite old and belongs to the 90s and the early 2000s. So it doesn't really reflect of the sort of clinical practice we use currently in the UK and Europe in general.
Yeah, so we are still a long way behind because there has been a bit of a change in terms of what we actually have now. In terms of women going through cancer and menopause, why is it so particularly tough for some of them?
So for many years, it used to be taboo to use HRT after cancer, particularly some specific types of cancers, like, say, breast cancer. When someone is diagnosed with breast cancer, and the treatment itself, going through chemotherapy and radiotherapy, can bring on very early menopause that is often associated with really bad symptoms. And even if someone is beyond surveillance, very good recovery and so on, which luckily we're seeing more and more of this as we are becoming more successful in fighting cancers. Unfortunately, it used to be taboo that you can't use any hormonal treatments. Equally, some patients, for example, those who have family history of, for example, breast cancer, they're often being told, no, you can't have any HRT because you're at higher risk of developing cancer. So this link, what we call a causal link between exposure to HRT or MHT and the incidence or reoccurrence of cancer has always been amplified. Rightly so, because no doctor wants to do harm to any patient. However, this has been amplified using incomplete data or incomplete knowledge about all the different bits and pieces that feed into the equation. Specifically, the link seems to be more established with using synthetic forms of HRT, particularly oral older forms, compared to some of the newer, more body identical, somewhat more natural HRT. Obviously, all hormones are synthetic, but we call it more body identical because they're more similar to the hormones that the body will produce. And there seem to be more signals that these could be a bit more benign, a bit more friendly, and they seem to be associated with slightly lower risk of cancers in general.
Okay. Now, with the older forms and now the newer transdermal, closer to being body identical, they've actually been around for a while now. How come it's taken so long to get data on this? Because there are women who are screaming out saying, "My life is a living hell. I'd like to have my life back, but you're not letting me have it because of this lack of data that's based on older forms." How come it's taken so long to look at these that have been around for a decade or so now? Some of them.
Yeah, it's quite an unfortunate situation. I think it's a testament to the fact that majority of data we have comes either from the USA or from Scandinavian countries, and the majority of larger trials that have been performed in menopause in general, and they were performed using older synthetic oral forms of HRT that are more commonly used in the USA for cost reasons, because they're cheaper than the newer version that are transdermal body identical versions. They're more expensive. But I don't think that was the predominant reason why these trials were done with using these oral forms, synthetic forms, were the norm at the time. We did not simply have access to these newer formats that are now standard practice. So I think there has been, and there continue to be, a low investment in menopause research. In menopause as a field is a well, it's a health state, is not really a condition or a disease. It's a natural health state. It's poorly researched, and there is little investment from research funders in this area, or this phase of phase of life, or that every woman will encounter, and that unfortunately delays the evaluation of newer treatments. And we see this with newer forms of HRT. We see this, for example, with testosterone. We see this with a newer non-HRT formulation. So, for example, everyone is now excited about the NK3 antagonists, and they are coming to the market. But all of these were evaluated through pharma investment. And if it wasn't for pharma private investment, we probably wouldn't have these treatments right now, because there's very little public investment in this.
I know it's very, very hard for us to get money out of anybody to do any of the research. And the sad thing about this is, sorry to interrupt you, but let me just have a little rant here. The sad thing about this is that, of course, it's the effects on our long-term health, whether you've had cancer or not, based on those silent changes that happen around menopause, can actually be quite catastrophic for us later on in terms of heart disease, which is our biggest killer, in terms of dementia, in terms of osteoporosis, immune diseases, all of those sorts of things. So it would be very sensible to put some money into investigating how menopause actually affects those conditions and who the vulnerable people are. That would be a sensible thing to invest in, I would have thought.
100%. And yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And, obviously menopause is a common state of life, affects every woman. And there is actually very strong data from the UK, from the Department of Work and Pension, to highlight that menopause contributes to loss of experienced working women from the workforce. That has a negative impact on GDP. So beyond just health and well-being, there's a societal impact. And unless we help and support women at the workplace to cope with menopause by providing safe treatments that could be HRT or non-HRT, I think as a society we're losing. So it makes a lot of sense to invest in more research to make treatments in the menopause more accessible and safer.
Absolutely. Anyway, back to where you are and what you're doing. So basically, we have a lack of research there. We have a lot of that baggage that comes with it that puts a lot of fear into people. But what are you going to be doing then what are you going to be looking at, and what do you hope that this is going to achieve?
Yeah, so we have successfully secured a substantial grant from the NIHR, National Institute for Health Research. We're very grateful. They fund a lot of our women's health studies. And we raised a very important question, which is, what is the causality or causal inference between exposure to HRT or MHT and developing different types of cancers, specifically non-gynecological cancers? Because we seem to have some data about gynae cancers, but we have very, very slim data on important other cancers like esophageal cancer, pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, neuro cancer, all these, really that have somewhat worse prognosis than breast cancer, for example. What we're going to do is, this is a collaboration between my research group, EV, at Anglia Ruskin University, and the Advanced Data Center at Leeds University, Peter Tennant. And we're going to be using some very fancy statistics that are called target trial emulation. And this is a very fancy word, but in essence, we're going to harvest data from all GP surgeries in England. And we're going to do a lot of linkage to identify the women who had HRT, women who did not have HRT, and those who had cancers or not. And in essence, trying to create almost a randomized study within observational data. Now, this is not as good as doing a randomized trial, but I'm sure everyone would know on the call that it's so hard and expensive to do randomized trials to look for cancer, because you have to follow the patients for a very, very, very long time until they develop cancer or not. And so this is a slightly more efficient way of producing good value evidence. But the key specific thing that we want to do here, which we are grateful to partnering with you and your charity and other charities, that we really want to promote patient voice, and we want to understand what are the priorities for women with menopause, like, in terms of answering this question. But critically, we will be looking into all the different subtypes of HRT, so the different hormones that exist, because there's so many types, and it's not like just one tablet. There is synthetic progestrogens, there is natural progesterone, there is different types of estrogen. So we will try to adjust and come up with assessment of the risk of cancer with each of these subtypes. And then at the end, we hope to develop a decision aid tool that is so easy to use to help women going through menopause to really just look into this decision aid tool and say, this is me, this is my risk category. If I use this HRT, I will have this. If I use that HRT, I will have that. So that we can come up with a simple way to help women and their health professionals make quick deductions. Is HRT the best thing for me or not? If I'm using it, what is my risk of developing that cancer or this cancer? And I'm oversimplifying it, of course, is going to be a lot of work, but that's the optimal, the ideal sort of output that we're hoping to achieve out of this.
Okay, that would be amazing. But let me throw another spanner at you that might, in doing that, cancer is one risk, but then there are also other risks that have to be taken into account, such as, progesterone sensitivity or androgenic responses to certain progestrogens and things like that. Do you think you'll be able to make it as sensitive that it could have those things thrown into it as well, or is that beyond the scope of this? Am I aiming too high here?
No. You're highlighting a very important element, and we don't want to create a blunt tool. So we will try to make adjustments because not all women are equal. Yeah. So we will try to create adjustments for BMI level, for ethnicity, for age, when menopause started, for duration of exposure for the HRT. All these, they're what we call confounders or covariates, and they affect the risk of developing cancer. So we don't want to create a blunt tool that is not applicable to different categories or different groups of women. So we will try to adjust for all these factors, as well as other comorbidities. So for example, someone might have heart disease at the same time as having HRT. We will try to capture these. Obviously, all these variables are not always recorded routinely in our databases from GPs as good. So we might have some limitations on how good the data is reported. But this is featured into our planned analysis, depending on what surprises we get with the data.
Yeah, exactly. So in doing all of this and pulling it together, it's one thing to come up with the research at the end and go, here's this wonderful thing, and this is what we found, and this is how you can use it. But then there'll be a whole process of actually getting people to use it. How are you going to do that?
Implantation, yes. This is this is the same thing that NIHR asks us and say, we're happy to give you the money, but we want results. We want people to be able to benefit from this research. And this is exactly why we came up with this idea of a decision aid tool, because neither myself or any of the researchers with me in my unit want to just publish an article that no one uses. We want to publish something that is helpful. So this decision aid tool is critical in terms of aiding everyone to make really use of the findings of this research into their everyday practice. But also we will aim to produce larger sort of directions in terms of what are the ongoing knowledge gaps and where we might need some other types of studies in the to continue to invest in menopause research. So critical thing is to really produce simple effective and digestible information. And we're already working as well with the RCOG, with the British Medical Society, with other key stakeholders to promote the output of, hopefully the output of this research, that it goes into clinical practice. And we hope to do webinars like this to educate GPs and others on the risks of developing cancer with MHD, because it's a very important clinical question.
Yeah, absolutely. So when do you think you'll be starting, and how long will this actually take to become a useful tool?
We hope to start later this year, and then it will take us around 18 to 24 months to conduct the work. So I'm hoping in a couple of years I'll be coming back here to share the findings with you and the audience.
Yes, let us hope, because these things, I think a lot of people don't quite understand how long it takes to actually do these studies. Me coming from a journalistic background, I sort of expect everything to be done yesterday. It's like, what do you mean? It's going to take you 2 years to do this. But yes, I understand.
Maybe with AI we will become faster. Who knows?
Who knows? But will you be accurate? That's the next question, which of course is very, very important. Yes. All right. Well, I look forward to hearing more about this as it progresses. Will there be sort of preliminary, progress reports as it goes, do you think, or is it a matter then of sort of waiting till it's all in and then looking at it?
No, definitely. As I said, we are very, very focused to work with the community proactively, and we hope to have a lot of, lay members to contribute to the work ongoingly, and we will be feeding back through lay communications channels in terms of like any early findings or anything like that, and how things are progressing. So we hope to keep this process very, very engaging.
Exactly. And well, is given that, then is there anything that you want people to do now or in the near future that could be helpful?
Watch the space, and as I said, we want some volunteers, so hopefully we will welcome many women with lived experience to hopefully give us insight and guidance in terms of how to produce this research in a meaningful way.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for doing this, because it is one of those ongoing really, really difficult situations for women to be in, because it can really affect their quality of life, and we are really, really happy to help you with that, and also along with Menopause and Cancer and the absolutely wonderful Danny Bennington and her organisation. It's I think this is really groundbreaking, and I'm very excited about it.
Same wise. Thank you very much for having this opportunity to speak today, and looking forward for next steps.
Brilliant. All right, I shall see you next time. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it?
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so they can follow me, and they'll always hear about all the different research we're doing in women's health. We have a big group, and we now have about £4 million of research grants, all dedicated for women's health research. So we're doing different trials, different studies, and we're always welcome engagement.
Brilliant. All right. Hopefully we will catch up with you again soon and hear how it's all going. Take care.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
You too.